welcome. Today, our guest is the Reverend Dr. Hal Robinson Jr., and he is the pastor of Mount Moriah Baptist Church in Nashville, Tennessee. He has an earned doctorate, and he's originally from Cleveland, Ohio, so some of you may know him. He is my first cousin, started preaching at an early age, and he just has a wealth of wisdom. He has been invaluable to me over the years, not only as my cousin, but as a mentor. Our topic today is pastoring, preaching, and more. So, Dr. Robinson, I thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Amen. So I just need to start by asking some questions. We're going to start off. So my first question this morning is, what are some of the challenges that pastors face or expect to face while they are pastoring?
There's a wealth of challenges. One of the major things that I've learned down through the years is challenging is to get to know and understand the people and trying to channel them towards Christ and the philosophies that are taught within the Christian community. You know, there's a lot of heartache, there's a lot of pain going on, and people have a tendency to lean towards their own understanding rather than trying to accept what Christ is teaching us and telling us. The challenge is to keep people focused on kingdom building, keep people focused on what Christianity is all about. That's one of the biggest challenges that I see within the church. We are challenged on every side with the pandemic, with people losing their jobs, with the homelessness, with mental illness, and it goes on and on. So there's a lot of challenges within the ministry today, and we have to work together as a team to try to meet these needs.
Yes, that's true. There's so many challenges, and one church cannot do them all. But I think it's helpful if the church focuses on one or two aspects of in their ministry that they would focus on, such as prison ministry or food. Most churches do food giveaways, mental health. Those are some of the things that churches can focus on that we may not be comfortable with, but you have to also get out of our comfort zones, utilize our resources so that we can initiate some of these things to help people.
This is true. I have a friend of mine, and he drew this diagram for me, a picture of a pie. And when he drew it, he cut it up into many pieces. And he says, now, one person might be able to eat the whole pie, but usually they'll just take a slice and eat it, and then someone else. One of the problems that I find in the church that pulls us down a lot of times is that one person tries to handle everything, and you can't do that. Whatever your expertise is, or whoever you have in your church that might have expertise in something, we need to concentrate on that. Let someone else concentrate maybe on mental illness, someone else concentrate on homelessness. Another church, might focus on the prison ministry. But if all of us focus on one thing or expertise and put it together, then the kingdom is better. And we work together as a team rather than being separate and living in our own world. So you're correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then a lot of what happens in the church depends on the pastor um, and their expertise, their culture, you know, how they were raised, and their age, educational background. So each pastor brings something with them to their ministry based on their experiences, basically. And so I know that there's some seasons of pastoring. Can you expound on that piece a little bit? The season.
Oh, yeah, seasons change. It's as I've been doing this now for almost over 50 years, and how I started, you evolve into different seasons of your ministry. We have a lot of that. One of our problems, the younger pastor, the older pastor, things that I thought when I was much younger. When I started my first church, I was 21 years old. So, and now when I look back over at the age I am now, it's a great difference. It's a great difference. Things that I said, well, this is the answer. As I grew older, I found out that that might not be the right answer. I need to do it this way. There's so many different changes in the church. When we're in the church, things are changing rapidly within the church.
Mm-hmm.
We've come from a lot of times I say being entertained.
Mm-hmm.
Now people want to be more informed.
Mm-hmm.
And that season is changing. A friend of mine, Dr. Lucius Fitzgerald, he's going on to be with the Lord now. He told me one day, he said, the day is coming now when the 21st century church will be a well-trained talk church.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the keys in our ministry. Our people perish for the lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And seasons in this season, we have to be very informed. We have to be informative. We have to tell the people it's different now. Education levels and so many things that's going on, and people get lost in the shuffle a lot of times. Here's the problem: you can't get so wrapped up in one season and forget people in another season.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the very young or the very old, they get lost because they're dealing with two different philosophies about life and how things are. So we have to be real careful within the church to try to minister and meet the needs of everyone. And that's there again, and your first question, that's one of the challenges that we face, to meet the needs of everyone in the church. However, what I've learned is to develop a team around you.
Yes.
You can't do it by yourself. You got to have a team. You have to have people that can deal with every aspect. And the season we are in now, as I see it, because I've got more years now behind me than I have before me. But I sincerely believe that Christ is on his way back. And so a lot of times we have to go back to the basics, kingdom building and letting people know that Jesus Christ is real. So let me get started, because
Yes, indeed. Yeah. You form your ministry, that foundation has to be there, the foundation of Christ. who he is, that he died for us to save us from sin. That is a must and the foremost thing in terms of pastoring a church. And then the other things you add to that. But that foundation must be there. And even Moses, he had so much to do. He was told, you really need to get some assistance. Moses had Aaron. Yeah, Moses had Aaron. So it's too much of a load for one to try to carry by themselves. And yes, so we're also talking about the seasons of pastoring, and we have the young pastor. So what is the difference between the young pastor and the seasoned pastor? How are they different?
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just how are they different? The younger pastor versus the older pastor?
Well, there are several things. Now, one thing comes to mind is experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't beat experience. Education and all of that, but you can't beat the experience. A lot of times, younger guys, they are doing outstanding work. They just, it's just going to take time to develop a lot in their ministries. And they understand me. Our churches are moving under the leadership of young pastors. They're doing an outstanding job. But as they get older, they'll begin to change in a lot of their thinking, a lot of their philosophies, and how they view things. What I've learned as I get older, I develop more patience. As a young pastor, I didn't have my way or the highway, but I've learned how to have patience, and that's one of the key things in ministry, because you deal with so many people with so many different philosophies and ideals, and you just have to learn how to wait and study and talk and pray, and then it has a way of working out. It's easy to get frustrated, and I've learned when you get frustrated, as young people say, you get off your game. Frustration will take you off focus of what you're trying to do. So I've learned in my ministry and in these years to be patient, to stay focused, to develop a strong prayer life, and know that with God, it will work out. And here's the point. There's a lot of things that we start, we may not see the end of it as you get older. The most important thing is to develop it, to plan it, train the people, to get it in the minds of the people. It's not nothing that's done overnight, but it will happen sooner or later. Some people would disagree with me, but I've seen it happen and work so many times in my life. That's where I am.
Okay. You mentioned education. Now, how important is education in the life of a pastor? Or in other words, is it necessary, is seminary necessary for a pastor?
Well, I look at that as twofold. The first thing is education is very important. Education opens the mind. It allows one to think, develop their thinking, and it's very, very important. On the other hand, education for some people can be a downfall, because what you learn in pastoring is that people are not textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff that you learn and you try to apply it, you'll have trouble because you're doing it just one way and you think that this is how it's supposed to be, but you have to always remember you are dealing with people. You are dealing with human beings. You are dealing with people that some of them don't have a formal education. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes a problem because it was D.E. King that told a story, and I never will forget it, that while he was in the seminary, uh, something happened, and it was like he lost his spirit, he lost his power, and so he went home to his pastor and sat down and talked to his pastor about it, and said his pastor told him, said, you have to go back and find where you lost it at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He thought that was strange, but he was looking for another answer, but that was the answer that his pastor gave him.
Mm-hmm.
And one night in his room, while he was pondering over, what was going on with him, he said it hit him. He lost his spirit in the library.
Hmm.
Lost it in the Bible. Because a lot of times we treat people like textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
But people need to know that they're loved. You can't hug a textbook. You can't. You have to talk to people and share with people and listen to people and it
Mm-hmm.
takes all of that. And that's where we mess up a lot of times in school because we get so wrapped up with the academics, but we
Mm-hmm.
forget that we are dealing with real human beings that have real problems.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to balance that out. You have to balance that out.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
it's so important to listen to the people, and to have
Yeah.
structures in place where you're able to do that and let them know that
Right.
their questions are are important to you. Their concerns are important to you. Because the people, they are the church, and
Right.
the church cannot be successful without the people. Um, and I think that pastors might avoid a lot of pitfalls if they would listen, take that time to listen and get the input from the people. Um, I think that's a very, very, very important aspect of pastoring.
Correct.
Um,
Correct. I see a lot of it. I've seen a lot of it.
mhm,
But, one, it's amazing how if we're not careful, we'll get lost
mhm,
in our mission. We get lost in our calling. Um, I've learned in my latter years how to really embrace the people, the congregation. And that
mhm,
does not mean that the congregation is I had a professor that used to say people can be sincere and be sincerely wrong.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so a lot of things, you can't be just okay, well I'll let them, and I'll let this pass.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to understand that the church, that the people that serve in the church belong to God.
Mhm,
So God tells us to be faithful. God instructs us to be faithful to the church, to the people.
mhm,
Sometimes success does not follow that, but thank God he never told us to be successful. He just told us to be faithful.
mhm.
And so when we are faithful and do the things that God has instructed us to do, God has a way of working things out. He has a way of working things out. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think sometimes people don't understand then, you know, the pastor is responsible for attempting to show them the way, you know. And I say attempting because even that may not help in some instances, but the fact that you try to do that, you know, get understanding from them, and also they get understanding from you. And then, as you said, then you just put it in the hands of the Lord after that.
Yeah. You know, one of the problems is that a lot of our pastors are burnt out.
Mm.
And, you know, people don't understand that. But pastors have to learn how to step back and take rest. Take a rest, revalue some things, you know, think, spend time with the Lord, because it's just like a train that's getting ready to wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Piling stuff on, and never get any relief. So one of our problems in the church is that pastors do get burned out, and people don't understand that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, just one thing after another, deaths, you know, tragedies on every side. You get one thing straight, something else comes. You get that straight, here's someone else, you know. So you have to learn how to spend time with yourself and spend time with the Lord as well, because burnout is real within the church. It's real, and it's a critical point. Okay.
Okay. Now, why is it that some churches fail? We have many churches, especially in our area. What do you see as some of the reasons that some churches fail?
Yeah, very good question. Some churches fail because of the lack of knowledge, because of the lack of training, because being prepared, they're not prepared for the days to come.
Mm-hmm.
Some churches fail because they are pastor oriented,
Mm-hmm.
not Christ oriented.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our churches, and I've seen it happen so many times, the church takes on the pastor's ways. Everything is centered around the pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And the church is built up around that pastor. And when that pastor dies, or that pastor leaves, or something like that, that ministry dies, because it's not Christ-centered. Now, this is not to say that the church would not take on, it's a bad thing for the church to take on, you know, like the ways of a pastor, but there's a point when you have to stop. The church must always be Christ-centered.
Mm-hmm.
It must always be Christ-centered. And one of the problems that I see within the church is that we've become, a lot of our churches, like nightclubs.
Mm-hmm.
We got away from, we want to be entertained, but we don't want to be told the truth. We want to, we allow the world to come into the church, and the church is not going into the world. And so when that happens, the church is on a course to fail. I know here in Nashville, we have a professional football team now, and people come to church dressed up like for the football game. They won't spend 30 minutes in church, and they'll spend 3 hours at a football game. And I understand it. I understand it, but yet the church loses something within that. We think more of worldly things than we do of kingdom building. A lot of people won't agree with me on that. A lot of people said, well, it's just the times. But the times to me is knowing that God is on his way back. That we have to somehow get people to understand that there's nothing more important than kingdom building.
Mm-hmm.
Churches, another reason why churches fail is because there's no togetherness, there's no unity.
Mm-hmm.
We're not close. We have people in our churches that we don't even know their name. Now, in a large congregation, that's easy to happen because you have so many people. There's no way to to know everybody. But we have to do things to pull congregations more closer together and work together. Um, we are failing in so many areas. We are failing in education. We are failing in fellowship. We are failing in mission work. Churches don't do a lot of mission work now. Oh, we do in our conventions and so forth, but the local church, we are failing because it's like we are in our own world and that's it. There's so many reasons why we are failing in this day and time. However, we have to, as the old folks say, sometimes have to go back to the old landmark. When we really help one another and love one another and fellowship one another, So.
Yeah. What I've kind of noticed, there's cliques in the church, and in a way, you want to put people together that are like-minded or have similar interests, but also you have to make sure that they're still understanding one another, even generationally. The youth need to spend time with the seniors and vice versa, and realize what good can come of that, how they might be enriched by that process.
That is so true. We are so separated. We are so apart from one another, and we have to start coming together, working together. Not only in the local church, but in our districts, in our states, in our national, and this causes togetherness and working together for the kingdom. Because this is my philosophy. It's never about us, but it's always about Him. Never about us. It's never about the bishop, it's the elder, the president, the pastor. It's always about Him, Jesus Christ.
Right. That is so true. Now, and even across denominations, because what I notice is that there's a separatist attitude even across denominations. And I know that there's a certain point where you have to draw the line when those belief systems are very much opposed to what yours is. But there's a lot of Christian denominations that are separate from one another. Now that seems to be improving currently, but there's still a divide. There's still a divide.
Well, we look back now. What I've noticed among younger pastors is that those barriers are being torn down. They fellowship younger pastors, different denominations. They tend to fellowship one with another. They do more work together, more so than a lot of your older ones that was just trapped in tradition. And,
yes, to praise
because now tradition is fine. There's nothing wrong with tradition, but I find that a lot of times tradition keeps us separated, and there's no time for that. We all working for the same. I had a friend of mine said we might ride under different flags, but we're working for the same man.
That's true. That is so true.
Right. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, now, and there's so much going on now, especially in this time, with the pandemic and, social media, such as what we're doing today, wouldn't have been thought of 5 years ago. So what effects is the pandemic as well as social media having on the church today?
Oh, well, it's amazing. The pandemic, when 2020 was about to come in, um, everyone was saying, "Oh, this is perfect vision," and all these things that they wanted in life. And I'm, like Patty the Bell. I have a new attitude, and life is going to then bam in 2020, and everything changed, and everybody came from being excited and enthusiastic to woe is me, what am I going to do? And I understand that. But I look at 2020 and this pandemic as an opportunity to really get close to God. Look at what happened in the church. Um, Oftentimes, things that the church felt that they had to have, the annual days, the homecoming, all of these different things that people have. We have to do this, and all of the different days that the church have, they've been wiped out this year. But the church is still standing.
Yeah.
The church is built on God. Yes, people have died. Yes, people have lost a lot of things. But you know what? We are still here. We are still in the land of the living. We still have one another, and in some regards, it has been a blessing, because I know here in Tennessee, here in Nashville, we are feeding people. People are just doing things that they thought they never would do. Some kind of way, now we need one another to make it through this. And when I look at that through this pandemic, it's showing us that yes, we do need one another. Yes, that none of us live on an island all by ourselves. And yes, God is still in control. That the numbers have gone down, but the church is still rolling. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that tragedy tends to bring people closer together.
Yes.
Because they know that they have to rely on one another to survive.
Yes.
Just like the song says, I need you to survive. People must rely on one another to survive. And you'll see the most unlikely people working together during a time of tragedy.
It's wonderful to see how people work together within the local church, within the state, within the national. At the same time, I've seen families come together because so many have been affected. I've lost members. I've lost friends, pastor friends, and it have drawn families closer together. And at the same time, it is a reminder that all these things that are happening has already been spoken of in the Bible. You don't need a PhD to figure that one out. You don't need, that these things that are happening is a reminder to all of us that yes, God is coming back. Now, I know we've been saying that, people, oh, the Lord is coming back, the Lord is coming. Yes, he is coming back. And I had a member, she told me, she said, oh, God is coming back real soon, Pastor. I said, well, yes, he is on his way back. I don't know exactly when, but one thing I do know, when you take your last breath, that's the end of your world. So it behooves all of us as individuals to get ourselves ready for when he comes back. You know, this pandemic has changed a lot of thinking in a lot of ways to a lot of people. Families have come closer. Friendships have been made. People have helped one another in suffering, where they normally wouldn't have even probably spoke to one another. When I look at this pandemic, I think it's a message for all of us to get ourselves closer to God. At the same time, it brought fellowship closer, not only in the church but in the universe as well. You know, social media has did a lot for the church and a lot for the community, but it has also did a lot of harm. One of the things about in social media, because I feel the church will never be the same. One of the dangers is that people will feel they can stay at home and drink a cup of coffee like we're doing right now. Okay, I've been to church and that's it. And I think that's a danger. We need to come together. We need to interact. We need that fellowship one with another. And in social media, a lot of times people say, well, I'll send my offering in and so be it. And I think that's a danger. Personal. Yeah.
Yeah. That human contact is so very important. And even in the schools, we know that the children are going to go back to school. Right now, I think it's best that they're out, but we know that they're going to go back. And the reason for that is that they need that socialization. They need that personal contact. You know, otherwise they'll grow up to be very robotic adults, you know, not knowing, you know, how to communicate. And even today, I think we're losing some of our direct communication skills because of social media. So it's a good thing because it helps. If we didn't have it right now, we would be lost because we wouldn't be able to socialize at all. But on the other hand, it's a danger because it hinders the contact that people have with one another that's so necessary. Okay, and you know, my thinking is that, you know, God created different churches for different people. You know, as we said, there are people that are not educated. We have people that are educated, and so they're looking for different things. And so you have pastors. God has designed as pastors to meet the needs of all people. So in your experience, you know, what are some of the pastoral styles, you know, that you've encountered or that you've come across?
Oh, hundreds. I think you hit the nail on the head. People have a tendency and it's to go where they feel comfortable. Some pastors, they have the ability to deal with people, as they say, that's in the world, in the street. That's their expertise, and they do very well with it. They understand their thinking, they understand their language, and they are able to communicate with those people very well. You know, the Bible teaches us and says, whosoever will, let them come. People have a tendency to come where they feel comfortable at. If they feel they're not comfortable, they won't come. They might come for 2 or 3 days, but Sundays, but then they'll fade out. There's a book, I forget the author, but there's a book named The It. That's the name of the book, It. And the author tells a true story of a college student that decided that he was going to get into the church, and he went to this traditional church. And when he went, he had on a pair of blue jeans and a shirt with a tie and, some darker shoes. And when he went to the church, the people looked at him strange.
Mm-hmm.
And the usher told him, he said, son, we don't dress this way at our church. And said when the church was over, he walked up to shake the pastor's hand to tell him that he enjoyed it. And the pastor gave him the cold shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So he left and went back to campus. And when he went back to campus, to the cafeteria, it was a group of other young people there. And they walked up and told him, we heard that you got saved. He said he don't know how they heard it, but he said, yes. He said, well, we're going to church this evening. Said, would you like to go with us?
Mm-hmm.
He said, yes. And said, when they went to the church, it was a big warehouse.
Mm.
It was just a big warehouse. And he said, people were coming and, just, and say some of them had 3-piece suits on and some of them had blue jeans on. And, they were just dressed different ways, and said, but it was excitement in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And said he found himself, he didn't know what it was, but he knew he wanted to be in there because he could just feel it,
Mm-hmm.
And he joined that church and it changed his life totally.
Mm-hmm.
He named his book It. That's
Mm-hmm.
the book. And of course he was dealing with the spirit
Yeah.
and so forth. But
Mm-hmm.
that is very important because a lot of our churches just don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have it, people will know it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is not to say that you have to be running and jumping, or you have to be shouting, or you have to be speaking in tongues, or you have to be a certain way that some people say you must do in order to have the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But the spirit of God must be evident within every church.
Mm-hmm.
Because without the spirit of God, that church will never really prosper or grow.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we're in the business of transformation to helping people grow in Christ. And it was Pastor Frank Thomas. I listened to him sometimes, and he said, you want to give a sermon that make people want to go home and read their Bibles.
Yes.
You don't want to give a sermon that they're going to listen to and then come back the next Sunday and listen to another one. You want to leave them wanting to go home and read their Bible so that they get to know God better, get to know Jesus better, get to know and understand about discerning the spirit better.
I had a professor named Frank Grimmett, going on to be with the Lord now. And one of his sayings in the class was, preaching is designed to stir the mind. That if we preach and teach and people leave without thinking about what we've said, we fail those people. That we have to stir their mind up to make them curious, and then more to know more about this Christ that we preach about every day. Oh, that's his name. That there's power. Whenever one is taken over with the spirit, there's power in teaching. And I love God for that. A lot of times I've been accused of dealing too much with the spirit of God. I had a professor here again. He used to tell us all the time, you want to be so dull that you freeze the people up. You don't want to be so hot that you burn them up either. So you have to feed them and feed them right. And I've learned that proper study, proper prayer, proper preparation, and the Spirit of God will do the rest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a fascinating life. You know, God has been so good to me that I sometimes just sit back and think how far I've come in this life.
Mm-hmm.
I've faced strokes, and so many other things, you know.
Yes.
And yet through it all, I'm still here.
Mm-hmm.
Our church will be 31 years old in February. We started this church, this ministry, 31 years ago almost.
Mm-hmm. So
And
that's an
through all of it,
that's a great accomplishment to have.
Yeah. But
That,
God has been right there, you know. And of course, you know, I come up in Cleveland, dropped out of school, no diploma, no high school diploma, no GED, no, you know, went to Vietnam, the whole 9 yards. And yet, when I've got out, God kept me. I've been shot and the whole 9 yards, but I'm here, and that's my testimony.
mm-hmm.
That I was able to go to school, but I was able to go to school because of what the Spirit of God and what God put in me down through the years. And I look back now and I realize that I owe it all to God.
Yes.
And I think the danger is when we forget. I don't care what school you went to. I don't care where you are. In the case, there's a danger when we forget who God is. And I think that that's one of the problems that we have in this country has forgotten who God really is. And that's the danger. Because great civilizations never fail from outward. And they weren't worried about people coming and attacking them from out. It always failed from within. And a lot of our churches, to go back to what you were saying, they fall from within. Because we forget who God is. We forget who brought us this far. And it becomes us, me, myself, and I. And that's a danger. But I always remember that it's because of him is the reason why I'm talking to you right now. You know? Okay.
And I have the same testimony, you know, where God has brought me through certain things. And so you know that he brought you through for a reason. But I think that what I got out of that as well is that God is in control. Even with this pandemic, you know, we all had plans for this year, for 2020, you know, just like our family. We had planned a picnic. Well, now we can't do that picnic, you know. But at the time, it was a great idea. And you know, we, with our finite minds, didn't see anything that would cause it to be any different. But God had a different plan, you know, and he sent this pandemic, you know, and he sent it for a reason. And I know that in your state, you guys had the pandemic, but then on top of that, you had a hurricane.
Yes.
You know, so you had double jeopardy, you know, you had multiple things that you had to deal with. And so God is in control. We may not understand why. In our Bible study, we were talking about the Israelites, how they were in slavery, but then what they learned, you know, making those bricks and those types of things, you know, helping to build that city, is that when God took them out and they had to build the temple, they had the skills to build that temple. You know, they have become artisans, you know, and so sometimes, like you said, we may start something, but we don't see the end of it, you know, but we know that even though we're going through difficult times, that God has a plan And so we just have to trust God and believe in God, and do what we know what's right and be obedient. That's one of the conditions, is that we are obedient unto God. Not that we just accept them and then we don't try to transform. We have to work on a daily basis to transform.
Yes. Yes. Well, the church has played such an important part in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I love it so. Uh, I love the people of God. I love what I do, and there's nothing else that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
We had a conference once, and we asked the young people, say, well, what do you want to? This was years ago, and he said, well, this young man, he said, well, I want to be like Michael Jordan, and we laughed, and one of the guys asked, well, why you want to be like Michael Jordan? He said, well, I want to be able to buy what I want and do it, and so forth, in the cars and stuff. And he looked at me and he said, hey, Reb, he said, you understand what I'm saying? I said, well, yeah. I said, well, I wear suits. I don't wear as many suits as Michael Jordan wear, but I wear suits, and I enjoy what I do. You see what I'm saying? And I live by the gospel, maybe not as large or grand as others might.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people have to learn that when you put God first, um, God will provide for you um, to be able to live and do the things that you want to do. And then the next thing is, I've discovered that a lot of things that I thought I wanted, I really didn't want. And a lot of things that I thought that I just had to have, I discovered that I didn't have to have it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm at this point in my life, I'm excited more about Christ, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited about Him coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want everyone else to get that same excitement.
That's true. That's because, yeah, in my day-to-day life and my day-to-day living, I just want to be more like Christ. And how can you learn to be more like Christ if you're not into His Word and reading the Word and 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 doing what He says, doing what thus says the Lord, in other words.
Yeah.
So I just thank you for being here today, sharing your wisdom with us. Um, Appreciate all that you've done. Again, you've served as a mentor to me over the years. I probably would not have got my doctorate had I not spoken to you,
Yeah.
and when I was contemplating that, and I said, well, I'll be 63 or 64. And he said, trying to get a doctorate. And I remember your response was, you're going to be 63 or 64 anyway, so, why not? Why not have a doctorate? And,
Yeah.
I thought about that. And so you never know what small things you can do, what small things you can say that might be an encouragement
Yeah.
to another. So again, I thank you for joining us today. Appreciate everything that you do. Um, and I want to be more like Christ, but hopefully I'll be more like you too.
Well,
Amen.
thank you
So
so much.
I'm always trying to transform
Yeah.
myself. Okay. Do you have any final remarks? Before I go into announcements and that.
Well, I thank you for the invitation.
Mhm.
It's been a joy, and I'm just as proud of you and so many others uh, that I've had contact with. And the old song says, "If I can help somebody, just one somebody, my living is not done in vain." And I thank God for you. I do. The best is yet to come within your life and your ministry. Trust me when I tell you that. Uh,
Mhm.
I thank God for just the opportunity to be able to be, as my friends say, on his program.
Yes.
So God bless you and God keep you, and hopefully we'll be able to see one another real soon in person. Yeah, all right. Okay.
That would be a good thing. Okay, just in terms of us signing off today, I hope that each and every one of you were blessed. I thank you for joining in. This episode has been recorded, so you'll be able to see it and share it at a future date. Again, we do have a giving arm, and right now for Christmas, we're trying to have obtain pajamas for women and children who are in shelters. So if you would be interested in donating to that, you can send those items directly to my home, or you can donate cash money. And it can be, if you go to the website, there's a donate button there. Also, I have a PayPal me at AWO HCM, a Work of Heart Christian Ministries. So if you would consider that, I would appreciate it. Again, thank you for attending. Look for this broadcast every second Saturday of the month. Just remember to keep yourself safe, wear your mask, social distance, and let's pray, continually pray for one another, pray for those in need. Um, have a safe and blessed Christmas and New Year. Jacob, may I see you have your mic on if you would care to say something? If not, I just ask that you remember Isaiah 30:21. You know, if we trust in the Lord, lean on the Lord, commune with the Lord, then he will speak to you. And Isaiah 30:21 tells us that whether you turn to the right or to the left, which lets me know, you know, the road isn't always clear. You may go either way. But in any instance, if you're close to the Lord, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. So the Lord is always with us through the good times and the bad. And we just love him and we praise him and we bless his holy name. And we thank you for being here with us. And we are signing off for today. Love you. Bye-bye. Have a blessed week.